Welcome back. The President and CEO of the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, Joel R. Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and welcome back to all of you. I hope you had a lovely little break. We are going to be moving on now to our next plenary session, and we have a number of speakers and some wonderful opening remarks, so we're really looking forward to that. Just a quick note, we are going to be introducing the New Blue Revolution's Age of Technology and Investment Plenary. And we are going to have some video remarks. We're going to have some opening remarks from some great speakers. And we're also hoping that we can have a special guest from a member of Congress here to join us, which is really what Capitol Hill Ocean Week is about, is having these kind of dialogues back and forth with the Hill. But it's also the Hill, so they're actually in voting right now. So we may actually have to interrupt our panel to accommodate our member when she joins. So I just wanted to give you that note. But again, welcome back to everyone here in the audience in Washington, D.C., and for those folks who are online watching us virtually at Capitol Hill Ocean Week. Let's get started. In this final afternoon, we've got a really exciting panel. As I said, New Blue Revolution's Age of Technology and Investment. This incredible panel is brought to us by the generous sponsorship of Yamaha and the National Marine Manufacturers Association. The ocean has historically, of course, been a place of breakthroughs. We know this, fueling technological revolutions that have shaped and advanced our society. Of course, we all know at the center of that is the ambition, the hopes, and the inspiration of people driving those technological advances. And so exploration and mapping to running sustainable fisheries, finding the next medical discovery is all done through collaboration and public-private partnerships with people and local communities, businesses and nonprofits, as well as whole sectors driving change. And it's exciting when you can always bring those folks together to talk about how and why these breakthroughs matter to people and why we should care and how we're going to tap into them to advance our progress in the oceans, the Great Lakes, and our waterways that we all care about. So in an age, of course, driven by AI and machine learning and autonomous vehicles, you know, the ocean enterprise is kind of on the tip of everybody's tongues, and we need a way in. We need an invitation to understand how these incredible technologies matter. So this exciting group of very visionary leaders from all different types of organizations and companies are going to be on the stage to talk about how we advance cutting-edge technologies to advance the blue economy. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce some video remarks from Senator Wicker. Senator Roger Wicker is a long-standing champion for coastal economies and maritime research, supporting the people and places that have propelled national innovation for generations, helping to fuel that ocean economy and blue economy and ocean enterprise that I talked about earlier. As a senior member of the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation, he has exemplified the multi-use and community focus of American waters, especially through the introduction of acts like the SHIPS Act, designed to bolster national security and increase American shipbuilding capacity. His bipartisan leadership through the Modern Fish Act, the Youth Coastal Fishing Program Act, and more highlight a commitment to strengthening the science and partnerships that conserve our marine resources. Unfortunately, Senator Roger Wicker could not join us in person, but he has shared some remarks. And as chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, he's leading discussions like these and markups for the National Defense Authorization Act that keeps him occupied. But he's asked us to share those remarks with all of us so that we could get a chance to understand from his perspective here at Capitol Hill Ocean Week.
Hello, I'm Roger Wicker, U.S. Senator from Mississippi. I cannot be with you in person today, but I wanted to send a message of gratitude. Thank you for the ways you support our marine research, innovation, and commerce. Mississippi knows better than most that water is powerful for good and for bad. We've made the most of our waterways, and we've lived through hurricanes, tornadoes, and ice storms. The blue economy has been part of my state's story for centuries. Our ports have connected us to the world. Our famous shipyards have produced world-class vessels. We've attracted business, tourism, and gaming centers to our coastal cities. Mississippi is operating on the cutting edge of consequential innovations in maritime technology. Nowhere is that more clear than in the development of unmanned maritime vessels. Mississippians develop vessels that navigate under the sea and vessels that skim the ocean surface. We build drones that can even do both. These unmanned systems provide military and commercial intelligence. They keep service members out of harm's way and alert us to changing weather patterns. Fishermen get real-time water readings, and we can even track illegal fishing. We've seen innovators relocate to the Mississippi coast so they can build, test, and launch new unmanned systems. This creates a virtuous cycle. Innovation begets investment. Investment encourages more innovation. Innovation attracts talent and leads to more breakthroughs. I look forward to what we will discover next. It's been said that the ocean floor is Earth's last great mystery. We've climbed the tallest mountains, explored the scattered island chains, and built outposts in remote Antarctica and, of course, outer space. We actually know more about the surface of the moon than we do the seafloor. What awaits us at the bottom of the oceans? You're playing a major part in helping us find the answers to that question, for supporting the health of our oceans, and for boosting our nation's blue economy. Thank you so much.
And a big thanks to the staff of Senator Roger Wicker for making himself available for those remarks. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'm now pleased to introduce Molly Drenkard. Molly is the Vice President of Public Affairs at the National Marine Manufacturers Association. And I want to again thank the National Marine Manufacturers Association and Yamaha for their sponsorship of this panel. Molly leads the strategic communications, the public affairs, and the government engagement practice on behalf of the $230 billion recreational boating industry across the United States and Canada. Prior to joining NMMA, she served as the Director of Corporate Communications at Anheuser-Busch and as the National Press Secretary for the House Republican Conference under Chairwoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers. Please welcome Molly Drenkard.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I want to talk a little bit first about the videos that hopefully many of you saw in the cinema just a few minutes ago. So what we saw in those videos was some pretty groundbreaking technology. And I think that those videos are a nice segue to what the panel is going to be about today. So before the panel begins, let me just set the scene for what we're about to see and hear. So as Joel said, my name is Molly Drenkard. I have the honor of representing the National Marine Manufacturers Association. We represent the manufacturers of recreational boats, engines, and accessories. So we have about 1,300 members who are part of our association, and a vast majority of them are small businesses. We're talking about 93% are small businesses. So when you think about recreational boat manufacturers, we're thinking about mom and pop shops. We're thinking about second, third, fourth generation owners, many of whom, as we've heard this week, they are united by the water. I think that's been a common theme that we've heard. And that the ocean has really united their family history through many generations. And so today, we get to talk a little bit about that history on the panel, but really it's going to be an opportunity to look forward at what is coming and what is already underway. So I'm going to transition here. I want to talk briefly about the 2008 North Atlantic right whale vessel strike reduction rule. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it or have heard about it. Perhaps you've seen it in the news. It's been with us for quite some time, 2008. Today, the conversation that we're going to hear is going to be centering around some of the technologies for which we could approach that rule. The premise of the rule is very, very important to the recreational boating industry and certainly to everyone in this room. We all want to protect the whales. We all want to see the whales succeed, and we all want to be out on the water and enjoy it responsibly. So from the lens of conservation and protection, the challenge we face is this: how do we protect our marine ecosystems in an ocean that is constantly evolving? And really, even the bigger question is, how do we help them in a world that is constantly evolving? And within the recreational boating space, we feel like we can help. So for the panel today, you're going to hear a deep dive that'll be on the technology that is in development and also some of it being deployed. The technology that we're going to hear about will hold the promise to help protect the whales, to help protect our marine ecosystems, and to paint a more optimistic future. We are very excited to look at this technology and think about how it is making the oceans more accessible and safer for everyone to enjoy. But before we do that, speaking of the 2008 vessel speed rule, I just want to frame that out a little bit more. We've talked a lot about the rule, but really, when was it crafted? 2008. Do we remember that time? Do we remember that Facebook had just come on the scene and had just surpassed MySpace? Or maybe that Google Chrome had just been launched and was surpassing Internet Explorer, which some of us may remember, Internet Explorer. Or perhaps the iPhone. It had just celebrated its 1-year anniversary. So when we think about 2008, for some of us, myself included, 2008 doesn't feel that far away. But when we actually look at how far away it is, we realize we've come a long way from then. And so the question I think that we're all asking ourselves is, with technology moving so quickly, how can government keep up? We believe, within the recreational boating industry, that it is healthy and important, if not imperative, that government periodically examine their rules and regulations to make sure that they are doing what they were intended to do. Just yesterday, we saw that NOAA closed the comment period for their advance notice of proposed rulemaking on the original 2008 rule. NOAA said they are looking to make updates to the rule to incorporate technology and to enhance conservation efficacy, their words, conservation efficacy for the North Atlantic right whale. That is a really exciting opportunity for all of us. And Dr. Jacobs said yesterday, he mentioned technology, he mentioned a boat that has some of this technology. If you were in the cinema earlier and you saw some of the videos that were played, you kind of got a sneak peek of what you're going to see on the panel today. So one of the things that I want to close with is the idea that we are here because we share the same goal. We want healthy ecosystems. We want a thriving marine economy, and we want a future where people can access and enjoy the water responsibly. So the opportunity really feels significant. And when we think about technology and how it's integrated, we see a future where we can build a more connected and collaborative approach to conservation, one that uses technology to inform and to aid and ultimately to protect. So I'll close with saying this. We've heard a lot today and yesterday about heritage. And I would say that the panel you're about to see and hopefully learn from really sits at the intersection of that heritage and innovation. So hopefully, as the panel concludes, you'll leave here just a little bit more optimistic about some of the technology that's available, that can be deployed now, or that is underway and will be available soon, and hopefully leave with the impression that the technology is closer than we think. So with that, I'll turn it over to the panel, Excited to hear from them, and thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Molly. Now to introduce the moderator for our panel. Dr. Kelly Kryc is a seasoned ocean policy and science leader with experience spanning NOAA, the White House, the State Department, the Department of Interior, and the U.S. Senate. Most recently, she served as NOAA's Deputy Assistant Secretary for International Fisheries, leading U.S. engagement on global fishing negotiations, and now serves as a principal cross-cutting strategist at MITRE. She holds a Ph.D. in Earth Science from Boston University and has held leadership roles with the New England Aquarium, Center for American Progress, and the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. Please welcome Dr. Kryc and the panelists to the stage at Chow.
Hello. It's such a pleasure to be here. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation for hosting Chow, and to the sponsors who make it a reality. Thanks to our opening speakers and also another speaker yet to come. And as we turn to this panel, I think Molly really set us up very, very well. I've had the benefit of listening to the panels that have come before. We've heard about the role of the ocean, the coasts, and the Great Lakes as an integral part of our cultural heritage, our food and economic security, and our well-being. As the ocean continues to experience rapid changes, the question at the front of my mind is always, how do we balance human use of the ocean with overall health of the ocean to ensure it continues to be the lifeblood of communities and ecosystems for generations to come? In that vein, the ocean has unlimited potential to offer solutions, and technology and data are the invaluable tools that can unlock that potential and spark innovation. I'm pleased to welcome 4 really terrific panelists today. Between them, we will cover the spectrum of innovative sensors and platforms, mapping applications and capabilities that use those data, and the end user community putting those applications to use on the water itself. With us today, to my left, Keith Van Graafeiland of Esri, Shaun Ruge of Garmin International, Tosca Lichtenheld of Sofar Ocean, and John DePersenaire of Viking Marine Group. I'm going to turn to each of them to introduce themselves because I think they can do a far better job than I can. So we'll start with Keith. If you could please just introduce yourself, maybe a little introduction to Esri, and I'll ask the same of each of you as we go down the line.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Kelly, and thanks to you all for being here this afternoon and the opportunity to present here on this panel. My name is Keith Van Graafeiland. I am a senior principal GIS engineer at Esri and the lead for ocean science within our community lead for ocean science within Esri. So for those of you not familiar with Esri, we're the global leader in GIS technology and software, and we were founded in 1969 by Jack and Laura Dangermond. And we, our whole mission is behind, serving our users and what they do with GIS. And I'd like to share some of that today. I'm a visual person, and along those lines, we're going to be talking about some of these different sanctuaries. So here's a mapping product generated by the National Marine Sanctuaries that share some of the great, that informs us about the 18 different sanctuaries that are out there, and each one of them has different challenges, and I think we'll touch on some of those challenges in this panel today. But knowing a little bit about what we're going to talk about and being a visual person, maps and GIS lets you overlay information. And along those lines, this is an example of data that we're going to talk about today that's been converted into information, right? So vessel traffic, AIS information really tells us who the users of the ocean space are. And then, looking at it from a national scale, we get an idea of what's happening there, but then looking locally at what's going on in a focal area, I think for our conversation today, we can understand, how cargo traffic, what that looks like. And so this is just a primer on GIS and also like vessel traffic, right? So there's information that's collected out there to inform us all about where the vessel's positioning is, and then that's passively received by these systems throughout the U.S. And then turning it into these products is useful. You can interrogate it and inquire that and learn more about what's going on and kind of pique your curiosity. So not only like where is the pattern happening, but what's the specific vessel that was there. And I think we're gonna touch on some of this. So forgive me if I'm long-winded here, but I think it's helpful for what we're going to talk about. And then identifying these specific vessels. In this case, a cargo vessel, the MSC Shanghai, off the coast of Massachusetts here, and also off the coast of Massachusetts is the Stellwagen National Bank National Sanctuary. So how does all this work together? How do we understand it together? GIS is the perfect technology to help us paint that picture and do that. So thanks for bearing with me through the slides, but a little bit about Esri, a little bit about GIS, a little bit about some things that I'm passionate about as I pass it on to Shaun. John.
And yet,
oh, you're right.
We'll be taking a pause here. I'd like to ask Joel to come back out.
Oh.
Sorry for the interruption. We are going to take a quick pause for this panel and just take a moment to recognize a member of Congress who is here with us to speak and is part of this plenary. She's just hustled over from the Hill, and we really appreciate it and appreciate her time. And so we're going to ask her to join us in a moment. I'm just going to give her a quick introduction, and we can begin, and then we will get back to the rest of our panel and our guests here. So please, everyone, join me in welcoming Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici of Oregon. Congresswoman Bonamici serves as the co-chair of the House Oceans Caucus, a bipartisan group of House members committed to taking action to protect the health and future of our oceans. The Honorable Buddy Carter of Georgia is also a co-chair of the Oceans Caucus. Congresswoman Bonamici has led legislation supporting tackling marine debris, promoting blue carbon and nature-based solutions, ocean acidification, STEAM education, and strong workforce development for the next generation. She's a leader championing robust federal funding and public for the cutting-edge science and research that the ocean needs, including smart ocean data and monitoring and ocean energy innovation. As a member of the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, she is helping to foster partnerships with local and national innovators in the tech sector and beyond to support their efforts in advanced projects that benefit our communities and our coasts. Please welcome Congresswoman Bonamici.
Hi, everybody. I like the walk-on music. Thank you. Well, and thank you so much, Joel, for the kind introduction, and thank you to the National Marine Sanctuaries Foundation. I appreciate your patience. I tried to get here early, but I can't control when they call votes and when the hearings are. But I'm really happy to be here and welcome you all. As you heard, I'm Suzanne Bonamici. I represent Oregon's 1st District, and I'm honored to be the co-chair of the bipartisan Oceans Caucus. And CHOW is one of my favorite weeks. It's an annual reminder that the ocean really is a unifying force. We all depend on a healthy ocean. This session intersects that goal with the future of innovation. For the last 250 years, our country has relied on abundant marine resources and safe ports and a healthy ocean to sustain a healthy climate. Every age of human progress has had a maritime dimension. Dead reckoning gave way to the compass, and the compass gave way to GPS, and sonar that was born in wartime then became the foundation for fisheries management. The ocean has always been where we go to test our limits in innovation, and every time we come back changed. And now we're in a new age, driven by AI, advanced computing, autonomous systems. If harnessed and used responsibly, these have the great potential to transform how we understand, how we navigate, and how we protect the ocean and waterways. We have autonomous underwater vehicles that are now mapping the seafloor faster than any crewed expedition in history. AI, which we talk about frequently in Congress right now, it's enhancing the scale at which scientists can process environmental data, tracking species migration, detecting harmful algal blooms, flagging weather anomalies in real time. Environmental DNA, or eDNA, is a breakthrough for non-invasive conservation. We have Oregon scientists now using eDNA to map fish passage and monitor biodiversity. And marine sanctuaries, we know, have always been places of protection. And new technologies must reinforce that mission, not erode it. And as you heard, I represent Oregon's 1st District. It's where the Columbia River meets the Pacific Ocean. The regional identity and the economy of coastal Oregon and coastal Oregonians is tied to the ocean. It sustains livelihoods, provides food, offers an early warning for devastating hazards. And I have seen, I know the title of this panel is about the Blue Revolution. I have seen this firsthand. I've seen students at Oregon State University who are mapping kelp forests that store more carbon per acre than any other terrestrial forest. I've seen tribal communities along the Oregon coast who are integrating traditional ecological knowledge with monitoring tools. For example, the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians is pairing indigenous oral histories with autonomous vehicle data to map environmental stressors on shellfish. The ocean has always rewarded those who invest in understanding it. The rewards are economic, strategic, and life-saving. I'm working now to reintroduce the Blue Globe Act. We know oftentimes more about what's on Earth in space than we do about what's in the ocean. This will develop the next generation of mapping and monitoring research and technology and invest in the blue economy workforce development. So needless to say, right now I'm sharing the concern of many that the administration recently announced they're removing about 900 ocean data collecting buoys. It's very concerning. That data drives decisions and it saves lives. Every dollar we invest in ocean science is multiplied in safer fisheries, cleaner energy, stronger coastal communities, and the next generation, of course, blue economy jobs. So I look forward to partnering on all of these issues in Congress, especially with the Bipartisan Oceans Caucus and the bipartisan work we do in the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. So thank you again to the National Marine Sanctuaries Foundation, happy Capitol Hill Ocean Week to each and every one of you. I hope your time here is productive and meaningful. Thank you again for inviting me, and hope you enjoy the rest of the panel and the rest of Chow. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman Bonamici. And now back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Thanks, everyone, for that pause. I think it was really useful to hear those remarks and hear all those really inspirational examples of the role that technology has played in ocean innovation and in our understanding of the ocean. And with that, we will turn to Shaun.
Yeah, thanks for letting me follow that. So my name is Shaun Ruge. I am here on behalf of Garmin International, and we are a larger recreational marine electronics manufacturer. And most people know us for fitness watches and things like that. But we are a bigger player in the recreational marine space. And if you think about what we do, we manufacture sensors that are carried by boats, so think radar, sonar, things of that nature. But the primary product lines are helm displays. So we are the main user interface between technologies that the boat is using to navigate or technologies the boat is using to control, and the end user that's actually ultimately making navigation decisions and things of that nature. So Garmin participates in an industry group called the Whale and Vessel Safety Taskforce, and that's one of the avenues we engage where we think we can help bring technology and ideas to innovate how mariners are utilizing places like marine sanctuaries and hopefully ultimately reducing their footprint within marine sanctuaries, among other things. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be here and appreciate the opportunity to have Garmin be present. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Tosca, who also has visual aids.
Yes, I have both slides, and I also brought an actual spotter buoy, which I'll talk about in a moment. So hi everyone, my name's Tosca Lichtenheld. I lead Sofar Ocean's federal business. Sofar Ocean is a technology company founded by an oceanographer, and he really founded the company around two key insights. One is that if we want to better understand, predict, and protect our oceans, we simply need more data about them. And his second insight was, at the time he founded the company, it was really hard to get data. It was expensive, and it was challenging for someone who didn't have access to a large research program or a lot of capital investment to collect that data. And so the idea behind the company is, what if collecting ocean data was easy? What if it was as easy as throwing a spotter buoy, which this is the actual buoy I have right in front of me here, into the water? And easy not only in the sense of the ability to put a sensor into the water easily, but easy in the sense to get that data back. Not something where you have to go out and retrieve an SD card and write a script in MATLAB to access the data, but something where you can just pull it up and access it, giving us more of a real-time insight into what's happening in the ocean. So as a company, Sofar produces the spotter buoy. We also recently released a very small USV, and these systems are modular and designed to collect environmental information, as well as have the opportunity to plug in additional sensors, whether that's to monitor subsea currents or sound, which is really relevant with some of the whale discussions we're having today, or acidification in the case of coral reefs, for example. So we do work quite a bit with the national marine sanctuaries. For one example is in the Florida Keys, they have, I think, about 24 of our systems to help monitor temperature and acidity in the reefs, to monitor for heat stress events. And it turns out that that data is valuable not only for research and for protection, but also for the community. It turns out that boaters were starting to look at the data to have a better sense of what the weather conditions were going to be. Or recreational divers were taking a peek to see, hey, is the water chilly today? And so this data, I think, has value, and Congresswoman Bonamici alluded to this as well. Like, every dollar we put into understanding our ocean pays dividends in ways that are sometimes hard to measure, but certainly influence the blue economy. We also do work in the Flower Garden Banks National Marine Sanctuary, as well as others, including Wisconsin Shipwreck Bay. And then we also do projects in coastal communities, which Congresswoman Bonamici also alluded to, bringing ocean data to communities that traditionally did not have access. And that's the power of making ocean data easy. So with that, I'll turn things over to John.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for the foundation for having us and putting together this panel. I think it's a great and timely discussion. So good afternoon. My name is John DePersenaire. I'm the Director of Government Affairs and Sustainability for the Viking Marine Group. Some of you may be familiar with our work. We're a boat builder that's been in operation for 62 years. We build Viking yachts, which are primarily purpose-built for engaging some of the offshore fisheries, billfish and marlin and tuna, things like that. Molly kind of couched the economic impact of the marine industry pretty well in her opening remarks. We don't qualify as a small business, but I think one thing that's very impressive to me working there is we have roughly 2,000 employees, and it's pretty incredible to see families and multi-generations working there, raising kids, sending kids to college, all on the ocean, building boats to go out and fish on the ocean. So it's a really special and incredible thing. So obviously, from our workforce perspective, from our business plan perspective, we are innately tied to the ocean, our ability to access the ocean, what happens in the ocean, and ultimately the health of the ocean. So I think that's a critical understanding with the leadership in the company, that we have to have well-managed resources. We have to have clean and healthy oceans for us to continue in this work, and we all want to continue this work for another 60 years or so. I also, as Shaun mentioned, the Whale and Vessel Safety Task Force, I'm a chair of that right now. We put that together a few years ago as an approach to bring together companies that had expertise, hardware, skill sets that could help us with this issue. So one thing that's really critical for us when we're designing a new boat, for example, we think about certain things. We think about performance. We think about amenities, craftsmanship, efficiency. Safety is another one. It's a critical one, and I'm not sure if anyone's had experiences on the water boating, and there's a scary situation, or it's a pretty traumatic event, and so for us, safety is just something that is just fundamentally important in boating. Not that it's not in automobiles, but it's much different if you break down 100 miles offshore. So safety is a big thing for us, and so it was a natural fit as this the vessel strike issue to the critically endangered North Atlantic right whale sort of came to us through some proposed regulations, which were going to be operationally challenging for us. We didn't dispute the fact that our boats posed risk for vessel strike. We didn't dispute the fact that the right whale deserved our attention and our efforts for conservation. What we did recognize, though, that we have a lot of stuff on our boat that's built around safety. We have a lot of things that are there to help us avoid hitting objects in the water. And so that's how Waves came about, was, how can we use this innovation, this expertise, to help with this? And now that we're in this age of just enhanced, exploding capabilities in terms of connectivity, data management, data export, communications, I just think we're a natural fit to help with this issue for the long term.
Thank you. Thank you all for introducing yourselves and your interests. I think, Tosca, you set us up for something I want to explore just a little bit more in describing how your sensors are in the sanctuaries, and I wanted to give our other panelists an opportunity. Keith, you started as well, an opportunity to describe the overlap in your work and the sanctuaries themselves, just acknowledging that we're here at CHOW, hosted by the National Marine Sanctuaries Foundation. And so I wanted to draw the line between technology and the sanctuaries. Do you benefit from this? How do you benefit from the sanctuaries? But alternatively, how do the sanctuaries and our oceans benefit specifically from the technologies, if you haven't already kind of explored that? And then we're going to get into some future-looking aspects.
Sure. So from my perspective, many, if not all, of the sanctuaries utilize GIS to understand the environment. So in terms of a direct impact, I believe that they're using GIS and Esri technology to better understand their sanctuaries, to convert that plethora of data into information that they can use to help understand the changes that are happening over time within the sanctuaries, whether it's localized sensor data that is temperature related, or it's vessel traffic information that tells you that there's an increase occurring within your particular sanctuary. Being able to look at the complex nature of all the data that's coming in with that lens, that unified lens, I think is comforting to know that they are, employing this technology to better understand those complex issues. And I think we've heard it a lot this week. Every sanctuary has its own set of unique issues associated with it. So it's not one one issue that's across all sanctuaries. Each one, whether it's the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary that's dealing with coral bleaching, or Stellwagen that's dealing with right whale activity, they all have a unique challenge, and I think GIS is helpful to try to mitigate and manage those challenges.
Yeah, I think in Garmin's case, we all share, I think, a common group of users or recreators that share the sanctuaries with the creatures that live there. And there's some direct ties to what sanctuary activities happen that make their way into Garmin's products, for example. So actually, Keith's a pretty good example with Esri data, where some of the mapping products that the sanctuaries produce that are meant to describe boundaries of environmental protection areas or areas of concern, as well as fixed assets that are deployed by the sanctuaries in terms of investment for sensor suites and things of that nature, all make their way typically into our cartography products, and as well as the attribution that's delivered along with the point object or the boundary, so that boaters can be more aware of where they are in terms of areas that are sensitive and not, and obviously assets they don't want to hit and destroy and cause unnecessary costs. But there's I think another area is what some of the others have alluded to, with the idea that the boat itself can be a data collection device. So, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in a little more later, but some of the innovations that are happening now, especially in the recreational space, are harvesting data off of vessels off board to be used for analytics. And that could be something as similar to the example Keith showed with vessel traffic, but it could also be time, space, temperature, environmental conditions, sonar recordings, video, radar returns that allow for 24/7 monitoring of spaces that aren't always monitored by a human or by other sensor suites. So I think it's really interesting to explore those pathways and see what that data can be used for and what it unlocks in terms of our understanding of those resources, which ultimately can lead to different management decisions and different ways the sanctuaries are used.
Thanks, Shaun. John?
Are we skipping you?
Yeah, I already got to talk about this.
Yeah, so the sanctuaries are interesting because a lot of times they're surrounding or they're in an area that has some value to it, from an ecological perspective. And certainly they tend to be good fishing areas for our customers and a lot of other boaters. And so there's a natural fit, I think, for what we're trying to do here from the technology standpoint. And I think what certainly Shaun mentioned, I think about some of the areas where, and how, particularly to the North Atlantic right whale, I'm going to just focus on that for now. We have some management that sort of cycles in and out from a seasonal perspective. I think some of the approaches and ideas that we're talking about even enhance that, because some of these are systems that we never shut off on our boats, regardless if it's coinciding with a seasonal management measure or not. So I think if you think about how we can leverage some of this technology, I think it expands beyond of what we traditionally thought about of how we manage some of these things. And this is certainly more relevant now that we're starting to we see this in fish stocks, we see this in sort of marine mammal migrations and behavioral patterns. It just seems like it's a little harder to predict, and some of the conditions, ocean conditions in recent years, and even their movements have been sort of out of sync with what we have traditionally expected or modeled. So I think, again, going back to Shaun's point, if we have assets out there that are able to collect all this information, you can plug that into some of these habitat modeling approaches. It starts to become really, really powerful. Again, the recreational fleet is probably by far the biggest fleet out on the water, just based on numbers. And so if we can start to utilize that from a data collection asset perspective, I see tremendous value for not only sanctuaries, but also for conservation and management of other species we have concerns about as well.
Thank you. that tees us up for the look ahead, I think, and I just want to call out to the audience too. You all have the ability to send questions up, so now that you've been introduced to our speakers and also provided with a little context about what we'll be talking about, I want to encourage you to write questions so that we can engage you all as well. But I am going to turn again and do a little forward looking about what's within the realm of possibility and what can technology unlock. So to each of our speakers, I'm going to ask, what do you think are the most interesting emerging opportunities that are on the horizon, kind of now? The possibility that we could be doing more now, and that includes data usage. You know, what breakthroughs are on the horizon? And as you're answering that, can you think about what benefit they will have to ocean users, to coastal communities, or even Americans who aren't living on the coast, since it's all interconnected? So I'd like to turn to Shaun first.
Okay. I think, so for me, one of the most exciting things that I deal with day to day through Garmin is, and it sounds like cliche because we're all talking about it, but it is the concept of data coming from the vessels. There's a lot of effort happening in recreational and commercial space to better understand how vessels are performing on the water and the impact that they're making on the water, and how that can be used to innovate, to change how boats are used, to improve situational awareness and navigation decisions, to reduce accidents, reduce vessel strike. So, and that could be data through a telematics device that's recording simple metrics of motion of the boat and efficiency of its engines and things of that nature, but also all of the video and sonar and radar sensors that are recording the equivalent of eyeballs on the water, and that can be used for analytics and even things like population dynamics of things outside the boat. So I think there's a lot of promising effort being done to collect that data and aggregate it. What the industry or public and private sector do with that data is still, I think, a big question mark, and it's something I know a lot of the partners that Garmin has are, I would say, I don't want to say struggle with, they're wrestling with, because it's new, and it's the tools that you need to negotiate and manage data sets of that size are relatively new. So it's sort of a new horizon that I think holds a lot of promise. I mean, something the scientific community has dealt with for a long time, but the recreational marine industry space typically lags behind a little bit from that perspective. So it's exciting to see that development happening, because I think that really opens some doors for not only the way the companies innovate, but just access to information that can be used to better understand and better manage resources.
Something I'm really excited about is edge processing, which I think actually gets to one of the challenges that you just raised, which is if we're collecting a lot of data, whether that is from vessels themselves or from sensor suites like the spotter buoy, I think we went through a revolution maybe in the past 5 to 10 years where, data was being collected, but maybe it was collected and then accessed later. You had to log it and then you'd access it. We're in a world now where that data can stream in real time. And now we're getting to the phase where maybe we don't just want the data, we want the information and the decision-making power from that data as quickly as possible. And that's where edge processing comes into play. And so in the case of Sofar, an area where we're making big investments right now, which I'm super excited about, is processing acoustic data at the edge. So not just having the ability to send that data back, but actually be able to analyze on the device itself, is this a North Atlantic right whale? Is this a dolphin? Is this a vessel? And capture that information on the device and just send back that little snippet of information and decision-making capability that you care about. I think edge processing is going to come like a really long way. Like there's very simplistic versions of this that already exist, but in a world of AI and machine learning and constantly shrinking, microchip capabilities, I think this is going to be an explosion, especially for the ocean sphere, which has traditionally been undersampled, not as much data collected, and certainly not as much data available in real time and in a way that you can immediately make a decision on it. Edge processing is the thing I'm really excited about.
Thank you. I might follow up on that after we hear from John here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the past two comments have been really in line with what I'm thinking. putting this into context, I mean, I think in general, looking at the oceans, I mean, we rely on them for so much between commerce, recreational opportunities, energy. You know, it's a space that we're not retreating from. If anything, we're doing more on it over the coming years. So I just think all these things are going to be driven by our continued use and dependence on the oceans for so many parts of our lives and our commerce. But one thing, AI, you know, I know that gets booed sometimes. AI, I think, is going to be extremely powerful for us because you have an operator running a boat, you know, steering, looking ahead of him. You have an AI classification software that can take a feed from a thermal camera, an IR camera, for example. It never blinks, it never gets tired. I mean, it can be scanning that path in front of that boat continuously. So it becomes an augmentation to what the operator is seeing. I also think there's going to be really interesting opportunities, and I've just been reading a little bit about it. So, you know, how do we incentivize good stewardship of the ocean and data, and having standardized data is going to be a great way of doing that. You know, blockchain is something that I see as emerging for putting value to avoiding hitting whales because they have value as a carbon sink, for example, and some of that ties into a carbon market. So there is all kinds of incredible opportunities to incentivize, I want to say good behavior, but, you know, coinciding in a responsible manner with life in the ocean, but also the other users. So and again, it extends beyond the whales. It could be even with fixed gear that's been deployed, like pots and traps. You know, so I think there's a lot of things that, you know, we kind of use in our day-to-day lives that are just starting to become real opportunities to advance what we're doing on the oceans.
This topic warms my heart. So you know, we're talking about all this data that's being collected and the concept of turning that data into information, and it makes me really think about the concept of a digital twin. So in the world space, there's this idea about being able to mimic or create this virtual environment of what those conditions. Let's talk about it in the world of a sanctuary. What a sanctuary looks like digitally. So as the information feeds in and the edge computing is done, and you can identify that from a hydrophone that a whale was detected within your sanctuary, and it's approximately in this location. So that's the information, but what's the action? So understanding precedes action. What's the action that comes from that detection of the whale from that piece of equipment on that sensor in that sanctuary? And it's the idea that you can send a notification to a mariner to slow down, right? Potentially slow down. You are in the proximity of this natural resource that needs protection, and there's an opportunity to do that. And so as we gain this understanding of what these sensors can do, you know, ideally we can have more of them, right? So there could be more placement of this, and we are in this age of transforming data into information rapidly, and that's happening. But is it happening at the same rate at which the decisions are happening, to where we can do something about it and it's actually actionable? And I think that's where I'm really excited about where we can go with this, and that's when the largest amount of impact is going to happen. And I think that, you know, from a GIS perspective, the GIS is central to that. So I think there's all the technologies there that can enable this. It's starting to work together with the partners, with the sanctuaries, to enable these technologies to do what we're talking about.
Can I add one
Yes,
thing?
please.
So first, don't forgive me, Keith, because I mentioned that the tools didn't exist for processing or relatively new. Truth is, Esri's been doing it for a very long time, so they have existed. But Tosca brought up a point, indirectly, that the one thing that has changed that has made a lot of this exciting for us in the recreational boating space is the concept of a connected vessel. So, I mean, your car's been able to tell you it's been unlocked for years, and your dryer can tell you that the load of laundry is done to your phone, no matter where you are. But it's relatively new that boats have been able to do this from water to land or wherever you may be. So more and more vessels, and we're seeing it on boats all the way down to smaller, 20-foot size boats, are carrying some type of connectivity devices, whether it's a cell phone connected to your chart plotter or whether it's a Starlink connection on a larger vessel. That is becoming commonplace, which is opening the door for things like edge processing and then the communication pathways, as Keith mentioned, to get those actionable items back to the boat in real time. So I think the more, obviously, places like the Sanctuary system deploy sensors that also do the same. They're satellite connected and they're deploying data in real time. The more those connections are made, the more opportunity exists to influence how people are interacting with the sanctuaries. And that for us is a pretty exciting horizon.
Thank you. Well, as both a scientist and a policy wonk, and to use Keith's word here, you all are warming my heart. So, like the intersection between those two things is exciting. There's so much potential here, and I just have to ask a follow-up question as the scientist, which is, as we move towards more real-time information and things, how are we considering quality control? How do we ensure that those data have been ground truthed? And are correct for our end users to make sure that that we are providing actionable information that is correct. If anybody has a thought on that, but your response in particular inspired me to think, how are we managing that information and data?
Yeah, it's a great question, something that so far the company has thought a lot about, especially being founded by an oceanographer. And so I'll speak to it specifically in the weather data that our buoys transmit today. So as I mentioned, we're exploring sound and all these other exciting things, but something that we're delivering today to the National Weather Service is real-time weather data from buoys that are all over the world. That includes wave data, winds, sea surface temperature, barometric pressure, and this is essential for day-to-day forecasting, but it's also essential to the National Hurricane Center, and this is also data that's used in the National Marine Sanctuaries. And so for us to make sure that the data we're delivering in real time is of a very high quality, we went through a very rigorous process to do that quality assurance before we switched to making it available to our end users in real time. And that included going through a peer review process, and it included comparing our data to more traditional forms of data that maybe were logged and that have been vetted by organizations like the National Data Buoy Center, which is known for having their buoys longstanding in the ocean. And going through that peer review process, I think, has given us a lot of credibility, and we plan to do similar processes as we explore new forms of data as well.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, I can just add something to that. Just going back to my comment previously about AI and the opportunities we see there from a detection perspective. I think from our standpoint, we're concerned about any object in the water in front of us. So if it misclassifies a whale as a buoy, I think the operator response is generally the same. You're going to try to avoid that target. Where we have concerns, I think, from the AI perspective is what does it miss? I think so that's something we're going to need some time on the water from. And certainly AI, just the way it works, is the more you train it, the better more efficacy it gets. So I do think that is something we have to absolutely work on. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get rid of the human component right away. I think that there's an opportunity in there for the intervention and the supervision of that model as it gets honed in, and as it gets better. I still think that there's probably a decision tree of sorts that's in place depending on the severity of the outlier of that level of intervention as well. So, computing is helpful for it, but I don't think that it's going to get rid of the human component anytime soon, and it's still going to be needed in terms of reviewing things that are, if it's a really important decision that's being made, or before we send this particular alert out, let's have it reviewed. But to review all the data as it's coming in, I think is and to flag those anomalies or those outliers is going to be the big help for AI.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think the only thing I could add, I certainly agree with what everyone has said. is if you look at some of the, I don't know if you call it theory behind things like crowdsourced initiatives, but the crowd tends to police itself fairly well. And if you apply that to data, I mean, if you take data from one sensor, yes, there's probably you have to pay more attention to whether the data is accurate or not. If you've got multiple sensors and some level of validation across a network, now those outliers that Keith mentioned become more obvious. And you don't necessarily need perfection in any one of them because the crowd can self-level and self-validate data. So if things like using boat sensors or even human observations to validate the presence of an object, I mean, just like you have in your car, when you see a speed trap or a roadside hazard, it's generally not reported by one person and present. It's reported by many people. That validates its presence, and like vice versa, its lack of presence is validated by many people before it's removed. But that can be done via software tools and things like that that help add that human element to large-scale data processing.
Thank you all. Okay, I think we have time for one more question, and I haven't seen anything up. Here we go. We might get two in. But I wanted to explore with you all, thank you. I wanted to explore with you all, none of the things that we're doing in the ocean can be done in isolation. Each one of you relies on partners, and so I wanted to explore the idea of what partnerships it will take to kind of achieve the vision we've just all been exploring a little bit. And so I was hoping that each of you might be willing to share a little bit more about how you're approaching scaling, bigger adoption, the types of balance we've been talking about as well between multi-use of the ocean, but also the need to conserve ocean ecosystems for the future. And so I'd like to turn, I think maybe we're up to John on this one.
Yeah, that's a big topic, I guess. So I guess sky's the limits for partnerships. We've been surprised by the individuals and companies that have come to us and said, you know, we've been looking at this issue and what you're doing, and we think we have a part to play in this. And like we've had a criminologist come to us and say, hey, I have a model that's for traffic accidents and crime. I bet it will work for whales. And it did. He ran a archival data set through his model, and it actually gave us some valuable information about where we could predict to see higher levels of risk. So it's unusual the number of partners that you could potentially have, but obviously the most endemic ones were, you know, the people that are building the boats, the marine electronics companies, the companies that provide the networking, the connectivity, the communications, and then also the shoreside part of that. You know, we have this large amount of data. It's got to go somewhere. It's got to be put in a useful format, and then it also has to go back out to a geo-relevant fleet, you know, because we don't want to overwhelm people with data that's not relevant to them. So there has to be some work on all of those levels, and we're certainly trying to explore that. Yeah, I think sky's the limits for partners. We've been really surprised with who can play a part in this.
Yeah, I think the marine sanctuaries are a pretty unique place in that they bring so many different groups of people together. And to continue to protect them, I think these partnerships are essential. And so, for example, our work in the Flower Garden Banks National Marine Sanctuary, of course, the government involvement and public sector involvement is incredibly important. But equally important are the people who are kind of pushing the boundaries of what's possible in research, and that's often happening at academic institutions. And so actually, I think it was Texas A&M University, they actually partnered with us, a private sector company that had our own innovative technology, to bring a dissolved oxygen sensor they developed to connect it actually to our buoy so that it would transmit that dissolved oxygen data in real time, which had never been possible before in the sanctuary. Another story about this sanctuary is one of their buoys actually got lost in a big storm. It got detached from its tether, And the community came together to find the buoy because there were so many recreational boaters who were familiar with the data from this buoy and had been referencing it. And so they really wanted to help track it down. And then we learned that the National Hurricane Center was actually using data from this buoy because it's in a very dynamic part of the Gulf of Mexico. And so it was really useful for them to have the temperature stratification data as well as the wave data to help predict storms. And so I do think the marine sanctuaries are this really unique ecosystem where these partners come together. And we do need everyone because everyone's fulfilling their own role, right? Like not every partner is going to be pushing the edge of research. Not every partner is going to be focused on regulation and protection. Not every partner is going to be focused on recreation or on making money. But together, all of those partners can make the sanctuary a better place, a more protected place, a safer place, and drive the limits of what's possible with technology.
Yeah, I think in my experience with, or Garmin's experience with the Whale and Vessel Safety Task Force is a pretty good example because, one, it's timely, but it represents a group of unlikely neighbors that have gathered around an initiative of reducing strike risk that involve public and private sector that I've never seen at a scale in my experience in the marine industry in the past. So for example, something like, and Keith's example on the screen there was perfect. I wish I should have talked ahead of time to coordinate that because that was exactly what it was show. But the Stellwagen Marine Sanctuary was ground zero for getting AIS communications up and running to message vessels that were transiting that sanctuary through the shipping lanes into Boston. So to do that, you had a third party that needed to stand up a broadcasting capability, which required Coast Guard approval, which required discussion of the FCC and NOAA. So you got public-private partnership happening there. Then you got to get to the boat, and the boat's got to be capable of decoding that message, which is where we got involved. So Garmin and other companies had to do software work to make all that happen. And it happened at a pace and discussions connected in a way that never would have happened without that use case and the task force getting people together. So I think you're seeing more and more of that happening in public and private world surrounding sanctuaries, maritime use, and general boating safety, which is exciting to be part of.
Great. Keith?
I'll wrap up real quick. So just from as a technology company, we rely on public-private partnerships. We are always thrilled to hear about the different uses of GIS and how they use it, and just along those lines, we also engage with organizations like NOAA, and we establish CRADAs, right? So cooperative research and development agreements to partner on a challenge to see how the technology can meet the need of the community or the challenge that a particular organization might have. So just along those lines, we have a CRADA with NOAA that we work on that's called GIS for the Ocean, and it really speaks to this large issue of being able to convert the data into information and to action. And so yeah, that's how we deal with it. And as a technology company, it's important for us to have those relationships. It makes us relevant. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I regret to say we are running out the clock, so for those of you who did submit questions, I don't have time to ask them. They're very good. I hope that you find our panelists to ask them directly so that you can get the answers. Thank you all to our panelists. I'm inspired, and I just want to say it's panels like this that make me very hopeful that someday, in the near future, we will be able to stop saying we know more about the surface of the moon than we know about our ocean. And I think it's about time we got there. It's in our backyard. It drives everything from the air we breathe to the food we eat to the economy we've been discussing here. So with that, I'd like to thank all of our panelists for their insightful thoughts and their willingness to be here today. And I think we're gonna turn to a closing speaker, but if you could all please thank our panelists.
Thank you for that just incredible conversation about the why. I'm going to put it that way. The why behind this powerful technology that we are creating and then deploying in communities, and for giving us the context for why it's important to continue to invest in these technologies and solutions. But I want to point out one thing, one observation that was made about this group is how diverse this group was across multiple sectors coming together to collaborate on these types of technologies for different use cases. I think that's a very important message for us to take away, to think about our waters really as multi-use with all kinds of stakeholders who care about these incredible places. And I want to thank the panelists. Thank you, Dr. Chris, for your incredible moderation as well. And also thank once more Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici for joining us for her remarks. As we are getting ready to wrap up, we're going to do a couple of quick things for housekeeping. We want to take a quick picture with our panelists and let them go. And then I'm going to begin to introduce our closing remarks panelists who will come onto stage. So I'm going to do a quick picture with these folks and let them go, and then we're going to introduce our closing remarks for this panel. Okay?